Hey, welcome back to Cafecito Chat. So today's conversation is going to be navigating the impact of recent executive orders and the federal policies. And that's been really, really a hot topic, right? And there's been a lot of controversy industry wide and as well as different organizations that we affiliate ourselves with as Latinos, right? For the most part. So, some of the questions that we're going to possibly explore is how are these executive orders directly affecting you, your industry, or your community? Are they creating challenges, opportunities, or both? And another question is, what changes or strategies have you put in place to adapt? How are businesses and individuals preparing for potential long term effects? And the final topic is what lessons have you learned from adapting to these federal directives? How can we stay agile and proactive in rapidly changing regulatory environments? So those are the questions that are possibly going to try to embark on and see what we come up with, right? So as we know, the executive orders have been distributed and a lot of corporations are actually making shift and changes, which is in turn affecting the internal support or efforts that are going on with diversity, equity, and inclusion. Some companies are no longer calling it that. That's being shifted. It's more belonging now. And that has been going on since January 2020 something along those lines. So about a month has been gone since this is starting to take shape, right? A lot of corporations are also stripping away some of the employee resource groups and efforts for affinity groups that are going on, as well as support for organizations such as SHIP, Society of Hispanic Professional Engineers, SWE, Society of Women Engineers, NSBE, National Society of Black Engineers. So those organizations are being affected financially because they're no longer being able to be supported, quote unquote, by some of those entities or industry that was being helpful to them by providing financial support and going to the recruiting events. So that being said, Victor, what have you seen? How have you been affected personally,
Mhm.
as well as within your industry that you could possibly share to get the topic started?
It's a heavy topic today.
Yeah, it's a heavy topic.
um, yeah. It's and I think that's been for me the biggest part, being able to live, kind of like let me rephrase that, being able to keep up with what's going on, to be able to understand and see kind of like what are the changes, and at the same time keeping a healthy emotional and personal distance with what's going on,
Mhm.
to be able to understand, the big old kind of like area that you can kind of like influence, like the area of like influence, and like the area you can control, and like what's outside of that. I think that's been for me very helpful. Um, and again, because if I have several friends that turn on to the news constantly, right? And that's honestly like very disorienting. You're constantly hit with stuff, and I think that's a big thing. Me personally, I think so far I've not been affected greatly by these things. Of course, there's things happening, and just we're speaking, I'm in the process of looking for new opportunities in other parts of my industry, because I've been for a handful of years in my company, and I think that for my personal growth, I would benefit from that. And that's definitely, I feel like everything is very still, and that's kind of like that's been part of that. That like there's not enough movement because of the uncertainty. Another interesting thing, and just like to wrap up, is that definitely the fear of this uncertainty, I would put it this way, is affecting business, right? I cannot share details, but like I know that, I mean, if you're looking at businesses, there's definitely big effect on the bottom line of all businesses, because like now there's like tariffs, or people preparing for how these tariffs might be affecting, right? Just like as any business manager, people need to prepare for the impact of this kind of change of policies, right? So all in all, again, I think these are the three things: being able to build my space and like build like some distance to be able to just like heal from how these news are affecting. I've seen the colder job market, at least for my segment of work. And the third and lastly, kind of like I feel like the business's performance are being affected and can be affected.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you, Victor. Thank you for sharing some of those
Mm-hmm.
thoughts and sentiments there. And yeah, you're right. There's that fear in the business sector as well. You know,
Mm-hmm.
everyone is trying to huddle. What is going on? How are we going to deal with this?
Mm-hmm.
Tariff wise, there's a lot of uncertainty. One day you hear one thing, and then 2 weeks go by, and then things start changing. So you don't really know how to prepare for that. And if you are a manufacturer or if you're importing, exporting, you got to figure out, okay, what exactly am I going to
Mm-hmm.
do? And sometimes you got to pivot right off the bat, and it's very difficult to be able to do that in
Mm-hmm.
such a short period of time for large businesses like that. At a personal level, you mentioned that some individuals are actually tuning into the news consistently, which
Mm-hmm.
is creating havoc and chaos in their personal mental health. So that's something that we talked about a couple of weeks ago. It's about mental health and how important that is, and how detrimental it is to one's health if you feel bogged down and if you really have consistently bombardments of bad news or chaotic news is
Mm-hmm.
really the thing that really gets you down, right? So thank you for sharing that. Let me go over to David Ramos. Hola, ¿cómo estás, David?
Muy bien, muy bien. Buenos días, Lázaro. ¿Cómo
Buenos
está?
días, buenos días, buenas tardes.
Buenas tardes.
The question that we're talking about is, how have you, the executive orders, navigating the impact of recent executive orders and federal policies? What's going on right now? From your perspective, you're a student at a local university here in San Diego. How are these executive orders directly affecting you, your school, and or your community around the school? And what challenges are they creating, or what opportunities are you possibly seeing being taken away? Can you share a little bit of some of that impact that's having on you or your community around you?
Yeah, for sure. As for like school, I'm not so clear. I mean, I do know like the DEI program, here in San Diego State. I'm not sure how much they're being affected or if they're being affected at all.
Okay.
But as for like tariffs, like how like you guys were just talking about it, I think it is like very impacting to like all of us, like not just like the companies, but also like consumers,
Mhm.
especially consumers of like how much like prices are gonna go up. I do believe I could kind of see like why like it'll be good in the long term, but for sure, I think like a lot of like businesses and a lot of like consumers are going to be affected at first from like these decisions. So, but for in school, like I'm not sure. Like I think I heard that they're laying off some people or that like they're cutting off some like funding for certain things for like certain students who are in the DI program. But I'm not sure if that's true or if I heard like correctly or things like that.
Okay.
Um, but yeah,
Yeah, yeah, and so we have seen a lot of layoffs being taking place at this point from federal government agencies and whatnot. So that's part of the executive order effort, I guess, to some extent. That's really spilling out into all the aspects. And going back to Victor's comment, that a lot of people feel frustrated, right? And a lot of people feel this uncertainty that's looming over your head, and that really takes some toll. So I'm gonna shift over to see Lourdes Sarmiento. Welcome. Thank you for joining us. We're talking about this whole executive order situation and how we're navigating the impact of the recent executive orders and the federal policies that have been popping up. So for you at the personal level and maybe at your company or industry, what changes or strategies have you seen be implemented, or how has the business or you as an individual been preparing for the potential long-term effects that you can share with us?
Hi everyone.
So,
So basically, in terms of personal stuff, it's more of a I mean, it's a little crazy to see all the bad things happening and the ripple effects it's going to cause. You know, like tariffs, the cost is going to be passed on to the customer, all this other crazy stuff. In terms of my job, and also like federal work or state work has always been like such a safe option. Like, and what we're seeing is so crazy and different from that. It's definitely alarming. We'll definitely see consequences in like a month or two, you know.
Yeah.
But for work-wise, I work in the petroleum industry, and we're pretty global to begin with. So I think we already have like a lot of people that work on like imports, exports for different countries, and we already have a lot of experience on that. It would just take a little bit of an adjustment to take that experience and put it into the US if we do have those and stuff.
Okay, fair enough. Good to hear. All right, good deal. Lázaro Saldívar, thank you for joining us. Do you have any insights or thoughts? I know you just recently jumped in, but we're talking about navigating the impact of recent executive orders and federal policies. With that being said, how can we effectively voice our concerns or seek out for clarity or advocate for necessary changes? What can you share with us, or what are you seeing at a personal level and at a corporate level within your job, or whatever feels comfortable that you can share with us?
Um, yeah, I think for myself so far, it's been more than anything just trying to stay informed with everything that sort of comes up because it's a lot of different changes that happen very quick. And I, I haven't seen it sort of impacted yet at the my work level. I work with liquid natural, liquid, well, more generally, alternative fueling solutions. And the way I can see that kind of happening or being impacted is the materials that are used in the fabrication of some of the stations that are made. Um, but I haven't been in that level to kind of notice it yet. But I would say just overall, I think for me personally, it's just about kind of being aware or being informed of all of these things kind of like taking place. The biggest thing that maybe personally that I've seen actually happen is family and with the immigration deportation and things like that. I have family that I've seen personally affected by it. Also close friends. Um, and so the biggest thing that I've seen from it too is just trying to be aware of resources to kind of have them be um, aware and kind of yeah, kind of aware of what the situation and the environment that we're kind of in, so that we can know how to navigate and how to help them out. Um, yeah, that's kind of what I've seen so far.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. That's definitely an unnerving or situation where you can definitely be anxious, right? And the whole aspect of things. I just saw a commercial last night where literally the individual that was there, I think she's a state Department of Homeland Security or something like that, and she said, illegals go, get out now or something along those lines. And I hadn't seen a commercial like that very blatantly calling out illegal aliens to leave the country flat out, right? And saying that if you don't leave, you'll be caught and you'll be criminalized and you'll be deported and you won't be able to come back or something along those lines. But it was to me, it was a fear tactic that was utilized to some extent, as well as propaganda that is being put out there indicating that, hey, we're really doing something, and we're staying out to the promises that were made on the campaign trail that was promised at that point. So that is something that I am seeing right now on television. And Lourdes indicated that she's taking a break from social media to protect her peace. And that's great to some extent. I love that. However, when you're in the industry, at least for me, I work in the DoD, Department of Defense contractors. So for us, as I mentioned earlier, employee resource groups is a very touchy situation because some of those employee resource groups are getting affected. The diversity, equity, and inclusion departments are getting affected. There's several industry corporations that are actually pulling away from supporting diversity, equity, and inclusion as they used to. And being that, some of our organizations, as I alluded to earlier, SHIP, for example, we all belong to SHIP, and we all attend the national convention, and we all see the benefit of SHIP, one way, form, or shape, or another, right? To some degree, we've all been touched by SHIP, and the organizations that we work for support to some extent SHIP. If you're, for example, a large organization, you're part of an IPC, that's an industry partnership council. You're providing funding to be able to bring that particular career fair to life on an annual basis. But now, because you decide based on the federal government mandate, I'm not going to do that, that means that more companies are actually going to be pulling away from that particular support effort. And at the end of the day, the students are going to be affected. The actual individuals that benefit from being able to be exposed to those companies, those corporations, and those opportunities that are being targeted are no longer going to be as available as they were. So that puts you in a different scenario situation where how do you go and get those opportunities if you don't really have any family members or any individuals vouching for you or supporting you or looking for you in that regard? It's going to be an interesting, rough couple of years, to be honest. And my personal perspective, this is going to push the whole effort that we've seen about 10 to maybe 15, 20 years back into possibly the early 90s, to be honest with you. That's my perspective, and this is my personal opinion, right? And the struggle is real. There's a saying that says, you can't be what you can't see. So if you can't see as a student in high school, an engineer that looks like you, that speaks like you, that has similar background as you, that has similar ties as you to some extent, you're going to feel far and detached from possibly pursuing that STEM field career. You're going to feel like you can't really achieve to some extent the opportunities that are available out there for you, right? So I think that this is going to have large repercussions, to be honest with you. And the fact that all the departments are being stripped away from some of the federal funding is really, really, really alarming to me, to be honest with you. And just last night or a couple of days ago, we saw that a lot of the anchors in the national news broadcasting, mainstream media, right, television, let's just call it that, are quitting if they're considered DEI hires, diversity, equity, and inclusion hires. So you can see how this is definitely taking a toll at every single level, and it's alarming, to say the least, right? And that's why this topic is being brought to the table. So let's see, Diego Martinez, I don't know if you can turn on your mic and possibly share some insights and share some perspectives as to what you're feeling and maybe how you're interpreting or what you see regarding navigating the impact of recent executive orders and federal policies.
This is affecting me or my friends and I in two ways. Academically, a lot of my friends are scared about the uncertainty on whether the FAFSA will still exist. UCSD has put out a statement saying that they will work hard to try and ensure that federal funding is still, that they still get access to federal funding, which I'm happy to hear because, and this is not just UC, this is all colleges. I'm sure all colleges are working on this. I mean, whether you support the executive orders or whether you support DEI or not, if your students can't pay for your school, then you're not going to have students, meaning your numbers are going to go down. And that affects colleges a lot. So, it's going to be very interesting to see how that plays out, especially at UCSD. But yeah, so, and then obviously the cutting of federal funding from education is not just at the collegiate level. We're seeing it, that the executive orders are also threatening high schools, elementary schools, middle schools, any any school. So there's a lot of fear with that. The second way this affects me is with the job. So obviously there are companies that have hiring freezes right now. You know, Blue Origin just laid off 10% of its workforce. So the job market is already saturated. Now you're adding executive orders that are cutting, you know, you're cutting federal jobs. And, you know, it sucks for me personally because the two interviews I've had are, one is with NAVAIR and the other is with Edwards Air Force Base, both of which, if I get hired, I'd be a federal employee. So those are federal employees. So now the executive orders are affecting those institutions. And now they, because their funding is getting cut and they have to reevaluate, they will most likely go on a hiring freeze. So now it's making an already saturated job market more saturated.
Yeah.
And it's very frustrating.
Yeah.
So that is how I feel. That is how I'm navigating. I'll be honest, I don't really pay attention to politics. I don't really, you know, watch the news, but I've definitely been looking at it more and more because now it's definitely affecting myself, you know, my brother who's still in high school and my family as well.
Yeah, yeah, and this is why we bring topics like this to the table, because believe it or not, whether you believe in one policy or another policy, this is really trickling down to the bottom line, the livelihoods of individuals, the educational trail and opportunities that are being affected at such a young age, as indicated here in high school. That's when you really are formative years for some of the next STEM generation majors, right? And if the funding is not there based on whatever federal criteria has been put to us, it's going to be very difficult. It's going to literally set us back a couple of decades once this gets corrected, similar to what COVID has done for those who lived through COVID. If you went to high school during that era, literally 2-3 years were Zoom, right? And online. And obviously that work from home got proven and instituted in a lot of corporations. But at the end of the day, some of those young minds, some of those young individuals were affected by the way that the lack of interaction with other individuals took place. So that's something that we have to consider for this particular effort as well. The federal funding cuts that are being proposed, as Diego indicated, through the FAFSA, the federal aid form that you fill out as a student, regardless of what your parents make. At the end of the day, if you get a couple $1,000 here and there, it really makes a big difference. And some of those individuals that will no longer be able to get that funding will be impacted. Mr. Mike Cruz, you have your hand up, sir?
Yeah, I'm listening to all this. And so I'm going to be a reminder for us all.
Okay.
How did we get here? We're reacting to a situation that people voted for this new change. There's a lot of people in the United States that wanted a smaller government, and the GOP has been saying that for 20, 30 years. And they believe that's what they're going to get, and that's what they got. But they didn't realize what they were getting. But it's too late. We voted. We put people in office. And now they are going to reap what they said they would sow. And so, unfortunately, the way that you reduce federal government, this is not the way to do it. If I was a business manager, I would have an assessment studies and evaluate. And we've gone through this before. Before some of you were born, in 1991, we had a BRAC, base realignment and closures. We closed down military bases all across the United States, but we did it in a logical manner. Yeah, some people were put out, but they were given time to relocate and create new jobs and do things with the equipment and the buildings that they had. Okay, so that's one thing. We have to remember that there's a lot of people that want a smaller government, and this is what they got, but this is not what they wanted, and you're hearing that on the TV. Mm-hmm. The other thing is, the other part of the policy is anti-immigration. We knew that was there 4 years ago, and it just came back, and now that there's a lot of potential power within in the government, that they're going to make a lot of that happen. So we have to remember that we just didn't get here by happenstance. Half of the population in the United States voted for this. This is what they wanted. And so now we're going to see this come through. So what's happening to you today is the consequence of what happened past elections. You know, people believe that this is what they wanted. They wanted a smaller government, anti-immigration, and so this is the consequence. So we're going to live through this. Now we're going to make it. The federal workforce is only a very small part of our workforce population. I think it's like less than 5%, maybe 2% of the whole workforce is federal. So that's going to get trimmed down, and that's going to get repopulated. But you know, like Diego, you know, working for NAVAIR, this is not a good time. I lived through when they weren't hiring. They put on the hiring freeze. And matter of fact, they even froze our salaries for 2 or 3 years. So this is part of the United States. We're going to go through it. It's not a good time for a lot of people. Some people are going to benefit. You know, big corporations are going to still make a lot of money. You know, they're still going to support what we have here. But you're going to see we might be in a recession. We might see a lot of lost jobs because of federal jobs. You know, when you close down a base in any area, it's just not the military that's there. It's all the people that support that. You know, food, maintenance, water, entertainment, all of that. So that's good. So the ball is going to start rolling downhill, and it's going to get bigger and bigger. And now that I think about it, I think a recession is probably in the works.
Yeah.
Because of the tariffs and cost of business and people losing their jobs and restructuring, there's going to be a lot of turmoil. So buckle up, you know, saddle up on your horse. It's going to be a tough ride. But what I'm seeing, what the government's doing today is not right. I mean, it's just flat not right. And so, but we have to say, well, we're all mad about what's happening today. I'm trying to remind everybody, how did we get here? How did we get here? And people on the other side of the road have been clanging on a smaller government for years and years and years. And this is what they're getting.
Thank you, Mr. Mike. I see, Victor, you had your hand up, sir.
Yes. I wanted to say something. I think it was like a little more related to what you were saying, Lazaro, but I think that what Mike just said is like super right? Which is there's a cost. It's very easy to destroy or very easy to stop something, but it's very hard to restart it, right? And kind of like alluding to what Mike was saying, if I was quoting you roughly, right? If I was a business manager, I would have not done it this way. I think that most of the people that like have engineering would have not done it this way, right? Why we're choosing to do it this way, I cannot speak for that, but like definitely it's very shocking. But yeah, right? Like I have a friend, a very close friend that she's actually from Venezuela, right? And she was, so she's here, now she's like a citizen, right? But for a long time, she has been just like a, kind of like in a humanitarian visa. And she's a federal worker, and suddenly it's like we received an email that they don't know what's going to happen with my job, you know. And she works in the Public Health Authority for Washington State, and she's providing HIV like treatment for people, right? So suddenly, you know, you have all these people depending on these things, right? And suddenly, you know, this has to stop at once. And restarting is very hard because they now have so much uncertainty about what's going to happen that they don't know what they can do, they don't know what they cannot do, you know, and so on. So kind of like echoing these things, like these government stop at once actions have real life implications. And on the other side, what am I saying, right? I think that every single person in the world would be happy to cut waste, you know, especially if it comes from public money, right? But as we said, you know, I feel like everybody feels like it's somehow wrong, you know, like the way these things are being done is like definitely wrong. Besides policy, right? If I think that we don't have to have a government funding kind of like XYZ activities, or if I feel like, you know, government should be providing all I feel like everybody that I have access to like thinks that something is like a little rough, right? So that's definitely the second part I wanted to say, right? That and kind of like concluding a little bit like as Mike was saying, there's going to be real life kind of like consequences. I think recession is very much a possibility, right? As you were saying, because like, you know, takes a lot of time to build something and very, very short time to destroy it. So we'll see. Definitely, again, I think that I'm happy to hear, Lázaro, that you guys talked about mental health recently.
Yeah.
Because I think that's something that, especially as we know people that are personally and directly affected by these kind of like changes, right? Like it's going to be important to be able to support these folks in our lives.
Yeah, right, exactly. Thank you so much. So, Diego Martinez, you shared some, uncertainty about the job market and what you're going through at this point in regards to, recent interviews with NavAir and the possibility of now definitely going into a freeze of whatnot. So, that's more or less what I'm fearful about, right? So I see some comments from Walberto here. Walberto, can you open up your mic and possibly share some thoughts or insights that you have shared with us?
Yes. Good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon.
I'm actually from Southern California, but I relocated to Maryland for mission systems with Northrop. And so being close to the capital, you see a lot of the effects, not just with politics, but you see it in the everyday. A lot of people in the state of Maryland, since it's close to D.C., a lot of federal workers have been laid off. So then now that also affects not with just what, their positions, but it also affects the state as well. You don't have a job, no taxes to come in. And because of what some of you guys said, I haven't been too much into politics prior, but I'm starting to pay attention. And one of the things that happened last night was that the House Representatives passed, this incoming budget bill. And so one of the things is that they were going to have an increase in defense spending and border spending. So I'm curious as how would that affect, as someone mentioned about military bases or DoD contractors?
Yeah, it's an interesting question, right? So how will that affect? Yes, Mr. Mike Cruz.
Yeah, we're going to have to look, we're all going to have to get involved in budgeting now. We got to put our eyes on what's in the budget and what's not in the budget. And if you understand the present policy, they want to support the military faction that will support immigration, border, not just defense. So so we have to be aware of the movement of our government and which way it's going. Now, for the DoD industry at large, we got to watch the budget. Are they going to cut some of the defense programs directly? I don't see that. Cutting ships, cutting airplanes, cutting military strength. They may want to increase some of those for border defense. Now that's a lot different than put money into our national defense policy. Protecting us against. Who were the bad guys anymore? It's not Russia.
Yeah, they're our friends
buddies.
Now. They're our
They're
friends.
our buddies now, so we don't have to do that. And so all we have to worry about is maybe China. But again, we as professional engineers, we don't like to worry about politics, but I spent a year at Naval Postgraduate School getting very much involved in policy making and budgeting, et cetera, et cetera. So it puts a new perspective on life. We're going to have to be aware of it more, and it may affect you directly, especially if you're working for the government. You may get the hiring freezes. If you're in, but you may not get pay raises. And if you're not in, you can't get in. So there's a lot of negative consequences that are going to come with that to certain people. Border Patrol they may expand their numbers and double. And if you want to get a job, you're going to have to go to ICE or the Border Patrol. or work with some type of anti-immigration workforce. So we need to be aware of that. We need to watch that and see if that grows. And if it grows, then we have to be wary of what our nation is doing as a country. I mean, when we have a potentially a police state along our borders, that's going to be tough. I mean, that's going to affect everybody along the borders, both fully immigrated, partially immigrated, and even if you're born here, you may lose some of the constitutional rights that you have. So we all have to do our little part in understanding how we got here and what we have to do and what are the consequences. And they're going to be, like Victor was saying, I've been through this before. So government reductions are real, but it's not the end of the world. And that's the other thing you need to understand. Yeah, there's going to be some difficulties, but our economy is not going to disappear. It may cough and burp a little bit and pass some gas, but we're going to be here. And you have to support those people that are supporting the way the government should be handling itself, not the way it's doing it today. And so you're gonna, like I've been telling everybody, believe it or not, there's going to be a revolution. I'm sorry to say, but that revolution has to take place, and that revolution is going to be you, me, I, and everybody on the ground. Because if we don't say anything, I hate to think what's going to happen. So the revolution is coming. We on the ground need to take action.
Thank you, Mr. Mike Cruz. Thank you, sir. Thank you. Appreciate the comments. Let me see. Alberto, you said 100 miles from the border around the U.S. That is correct. Jurisdiction for, the policing of the border is 100 miles from the border on U.S. soil as well. So that kind of takes a lot from, at least we're in San Diego. In San Diego, if you take 100 miles, that leaves you all the way up to almost Orange County, LA area. That's more or less what it covers, right? So it literally just, if you draw a line across that, it literally goes all the way to all the other states and whatnot. So yes, Mr. Mike Cruz, go ahead.
Hey, I got to smile because many of you know I do bicycle riding.
Yeah, right,
I rode my bicycle basically from San Diego to El Paso down to Brownsville, Texas, along the border.
Yep.
Along the border, all the perimeter of the United States along the southern border. And you know what? There's a lot of cactus out there.
Yeah.
There is not a lot of people that live on the border other than in the cities. And so there's a lot of space out there. And so then you think about, where does the Border Patrol have to patrol? And it's going to take a lot of resources to close our border. We're not going to be able to do it.
Yeah.
We're not going to be able to do it unless we put, like they did on the Great China Wall. Every quarter mile you put a post.
Yeah.
Or like they did on the Berlin Wall. You wall it in and you put military guards so many feet apart where nobody can go. We got thousands of miles of open space.
Yeah. Right. Exactly. Yeah. Yep. Unless, and like you said, we're going into that, you can start seeing that we're going into this police state mentality. And if that really happens, that could be the next step, to put those posts every quarter mile, every mile or so. And that would be devastating to see it happen, right? We already saw a couple situations, at least here in the local San Diego area, where barbed wire is being put on the actual fence itself. So now you're literally, it's reminiscent of the wall dividing West and East Germany. So that's more or less what I remember, and that's what it reminds me of when I see those images. So that's interesting to see. So let's I want to touch on David Ramos. Any for you, sir, what is the situation specifically talking about? We heard Lázaro Saldívar talk about, frustration in situations being affected personally by seeing some of the family members being affected immigration-wise with some of the executive orders and whatnot. What's your thought? What's your perspective? What's your personal feel in regards to the current situation?
For me, all I could really say, at first I was really worried because, it's something that new. It's very new, where I never would have thought of having this being part of in my head. I'm like, oh, now I have to worry about this, and I try not to let it not the fear but the worriness get over me. So for me, what I just do is just I continue in doing what I've been doing, and that is just focusing in school, focusing in my family, and my friends too. But just that, clubs. As terms as working wise, it is kind of now okay, I have to worry about even going on streets because when the new administration came in, I started seeing a lot of news and mostly a lot of Instagram stories of dónde están como inmigración ubicada, and you'll see them okay, they're in Mexican areas, which is where kind of where not where I live really, but where normally I go, and now I have to be okay, well, now I have to be very careful, and it's it's not. I mean, for me, it's I'm very Mexican. I look Mexican. I look Indian. It's como tengo el nopal en la frente, and so it's it's if así un oficial como enfrente de mí y se me mira mi cara, mi rostro. Si soy afortunado, va a pensar que soy filipino, pero si soy desafortunado, pues ya valí. Ya valí, pues ni modos, I also try not to think about it a negative way.
Yeah.
I mean, whatever happens. It's if it's meant to be, it's meant to be. God's will,
Yeah.
And but there's also good and bad, I haven't seen my dad for 17 years, I think. So it's it'll be something good to okay, at least I'll go back home, At least dad, But meanwhile, I just focus in school because as long as I get my degree, as long as I finish it, I think I should be fine anywhere else. And that's what I that if anything, if you were to ask me if I have any concern or any frustration, it would be mostly that. Because imagine spending 4 years of your life studying for this thing, this degree, and then being this close and finishing it, just so something like that happens. Or 4 years basically gone. Why? Because then you have to tienes que aprender el español. Otra vez, como tienes que aprender en un nivel profesional, va a tomar años, no más eso, pero va a tomar más años para aprender las ecuaciones que has aprendido, cómo aplicarlo también como en el español. Pues es como más tiempo perdido, más tiempo así. Es mi única frustración que tengo. Lo demás, pues, es triste, pero para mí, yo trato de entender, pues sí, al final del día, no es mi país. Ese no es mi país. Estoy en un país ajeno y me siento como, yo me siento afortunado y bendecido por tener la oportunidad de aprender y que el estado de California me ha dado como apoyo financiero para continuar mi estudio. Pero sí.
Gracias, David. Victor, sir.
Yeah. Just one thing, I think, David, thanks for, o gracias por compartir tu historia. It was very interesting, but I think it's something that makes me a little sad, right, for what you said. Yeah, it's not your country, but like it's not my country either. Like I grew up, I moved here 6 years ago on my own, and so on. But like I moved here because there's a different promise, right? Like there's a promise of like this country is like a place where it's a melting pot. Everybody can come here and everybody, the promise of like if you work hard, if you come here and do what you're supposed to do, you can make something of yourselves. And I felt like, as you were saying, right, especially hearing you, right, it feels like that promise may be like broken, or we are to the point that like it may be about to break, right? So anyway, just to reflect on that. It's not kind of like you said, no, it's not my country, but yeah, but like that's what this country promised, right?
Yeah.
And that's.
No, I agree, and that I think not to put David Ramos on the spot, but just there's a lot of individuals in the shadows like that, right? And there's a lot of individuals with that uncertainty, and obviously, it's something that we tippy toe around for the most part in our community because it's a fact of life, and it's a sad reality that is around all of us. And David Ramos alluded to INS or ICE or La Migra being, hunting in some of those predominantly Latino neighborhoods because that's what they are targeting and literally targeting because when they say deportation of criminals, it's a blanket statement, but they normally just go ahead and grab whoever to fill. I don't know if they have quotas. I'm assuming to some extent they have to have quotas or they're indicated to have quotas, right? And initially for the first 3 weeks or so of this new administration, it was really, really heavy and really hard. And I think it's still going on, but it's died down a little more. David?
Yeah, algo también para comentar en eso es como usted lo mencionó, es como están persiguiendo a personas hispanas y es como al principio dice como están como están they're targeting criminals, y en sí es parte cierta, pero también parte es como están como buscando a cualquier persona, como en las historias de Instagram que he mirado, y son de mis amigos que ponen de que están como literalmente caminando en la calle y tocando puertas para ver si y preguntando ¿es nacido aquí? O están en el Walmart o en Target o en Home Depot, y así es como la narrativa es primero a los criminales como los que han cometido así crímenes serios, pero no están siendo tan transparentes como dicen, porque pues lo que están haciendo es como están como ¿cómo se dice? Se siente como un poquito de racismo, porque es nomás como, si te miras moreno, o si te miras como que si apenas, como yo tengo amigos, tengo como 1 o 2 amigos que nacieron aquí, pero su juvenez, su niñez, se la pasaron en México, y apenas saben hablar español, pero son nacidos acá. Y es como, creo que la verdad sí va a haber como muchos casos civiles donde personas van a pelear de que, ¿por qué me están como cuestionando mi ciudadanía si soy de acá y no nomás porque soy moreno o porque me miro mexicano?
Sí, eso que decías antes, que dijiste tú que eres más oscuro de piel, solo por esto, incluso si hubieses nacido aquí, ya es una cuestión de estar preocupado. un amigo mío que se mudó el mismo día que yo desde España. Él, yo soy muy blanco, pero él es más moreno y él me dice, I'm carrying my green card. La tengo conmigo porque es que no sabes, en plan, porque no quiero, ¿sabes? No quiero que pase algo y me paren por la calle así. Y eso es lo que tú dices, ¿no? Al final es una especie de racismo estructural, ¿no? De why do I have to protect myself and wearing my documents, ¿no? Vi un vídeo hace un par de días de una tienda en San Diego donde entraron en la tienda mexicana, de comida mexicana, pero ellos son americanos y como entraron en la tienda y se llevaron al padre, aunque era ciudadano. Pero por esto, porque como no tenía, no sé, the right documentation with him, ¿sabes? Se lo llevaron. O sea,
So
entonces,
you mentioned that, Victor, and we kind of laugh at it right now. It's like it seems like a joke, but it's real, right? When I was a kid, había redadas. There would be like INS roundups, similar to what ICE is doing right now, and they would do it close to the elementary school. So a lot of moms and a lot of dads would, kind of just take off and run with the kids and whatnot. So I told my daughter a couple weeks ago, I'm going to start carrying my Sentry card just because, right? And she laughed. And I said, you don't understand. They look at you and they see something else. So because I lived through those moments in certain years of my life, I feel that I need to, one, have the documentation to prove something, right? I could say, you don't have to question me, blah, blah, under the constitutional right. I don't have to show you any documentation, but I am brown and they will not stand up for that. And as long as they ask you a question, they expect a response. If you're on the street, it's their law and their way. And so if I have documentation, I'm going to say, yes, sir, here it is. I'll show the paper. I show whatever card I have and I can be on my merry way. And we live in San Diego, so it could happen. It will happen. And the longer this situation starts going on, the more likelihood it's that it will start taking place and shape for a lot of us to be questioned in that regard. And how do you prevent that? I don't know. I don't know how you prevent that. And to Mike Cruz's comment earlier, we're literally going into a police state scenario, right? And that's a sad situation to see. David?
Sí, algo es un poquito chistoso, pero serio también. Como how to prevent it. Y para mí, literalmente el primer día es cuando empecé a mover cosas, empecé a preguntar. Y una cosa que hice, porque mi hermano él es marino. Y estaba pensando, pues como ya me miro mexicano y pues no puedo como controlar eso, lo que sí puedo hacer es como cuando estoy manejando, compré un sticker diciendo como Proud Marine, Proud Brother of a Marine.
Okay.
I mean, that's a very smart movement.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
Sí, es chistoso porque pues a lo mejor eso ayude, pero me van a mirar, pero es hermano de un marino que a lo mejor tiene papeles.
Yeah, awesome.
Pero luego como la mamá de mi novia, luego comentó pues mejor ponla como the Bobby head of like Trump, como ahí en el carro, como en vez de poner el rosario, reemplaza eso y pon la imagen de Trump. Pero luego le dije, pues voy a la escuela a la San Diego State, me van a cochillar las llantas y yo no mames, estoy tratando de cuidar y ya.
Okay. Gracias, David. Mr. Mike Cruz, you have your hand up, sir?
Yeah, two thoughts.
Yep.
Our brother in black, the Negro of the United States have gone through this.
Yep.
So now you're feeling some of the desperation that they have gone through, and it's hard, and it's the family. I mean, the second thing I'd like to say is that if you lose hope in this United States, then the other side has won. They are creating despair, fear, hatred. All of this stuff is to get you to lose faith in the United States. You got to keep your hope. So no matter how hard things get, it's a point in time. Keep the faith. Keep the faith in the United States that this is a land of opportunity, and this too will pass. Now, the outcome of it may change us a little bit, but I think if we survive, we'll go back to being the United States. The Statue of Liberty will mean something to the immigrants from all over the world, and we will be a better place. But the time now is not to lose hope. Yeah, there's going to be despair. There's going to be a little bit of fear, but hopefully there's a shining bright flame that is near you, and share that hope with your family and your friends and your fellow students.
Yep. Thank you, Mr. Mike Cruz. And with that, let's close it out around the room. Let's see, Diego Martinez, any final thoughts, sir?
Yeah, I mean, I think Mike Cruz pretty much summed it up perfectly. Just don't lose hope. I mean, I know we're taking 10, 15, 20 years, steps back, but, at the end of the day, just don't lose hope, and definitely don't stay silent. Do not stay silent.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. Walberto, any final thoughts from you, sir?
I would say what keeps us together is the promise and the consensus of laws, and that's from the Constitution. So no matter what administration comes in and what policies are enacted, they have to abide by the laws. And as citizens and non-citizens and everything in between, we do have rights. And it's very important to exercise those rights, whether it's, speaking out, whether it's invoking your right to remain silent. Those are really powerful rights that we can do. There are other rights that we have, but those are the more day-to-day that, we're going to encounter, whether you are a citizen or not. I am, but some of my families are not. And so it's important that I teach them those things as well. Because regardless of your citizenship, we're all human.
Yep.
And that's how we should see each other.
Thank you, Alberto. Well put. And yes, for those of you who, have more knowledge about the individual rights, the civil rights, that you can turn around and say, hey, these are your rights. Even though you're not a citizen of this country, you have rights that are allotted to you. So make sure that you make that available to those individuals. And sometimes because of fear, lack of knowledge, lack of understanding to some extent of how the social laws or the Constitution is instilled here in the U.S., some of those individuals don't really look into the rights because they have other things that are more pressing, like putting bread on the table, paying for rent, or staying afloat, right? So thank you, Alberto, for highlighting that aspect of things. Victor, any last comments from you, sir?
Yes, sorry, I was struggling with the mute. I think coming back to something that I was saying at the beginning, right? I try to keep healthy distance, and at the same time, kind of like being on top of what's happening as much as I kind of like my brain and my heart can handle it. And I think like what I'm hearing this is this, right? Like we need to stay on top of some things, and we have to make sure that we make ourselves kind of like capable of handling these kind of conversations, this kind of like what I need to know if something goes south, right? And what I need to know if something happens. So that's that. But again, Lázaro, thanks for putting this kind of like these conversations together, because it's so, I mean, it's very nice to be able to connect at the human level with a lot of people, with a lot of different situations, and, be able to, again, and I think that David was sharing a little bit like Grimes, like a version of this, and at the same time he was the one with the highest spirits and the highest humor. So I appreciate that a lot. It's it's very nice to be able to hear that version too.
Yeah. Thank you, Victor. Gracias. David, any final thoughts, comments, sir?
Yeah, I mean, pues un día a la vez,
Un día a la
un día a la
vez.
vez. And you know, like whatever happens, happens. I mean, it's not like it's right, but like uh, sometimes that's just how like life hits you, and you just gotta like pick yourself up and like keep on going, and that's it, Like whatever happens, happens. Like sea bueno, sea malo, sea horrible, pero pues así es algunas veces, así es la vida. Nomás pues lo único que puedes hacer al último día es tus acciones, controlar tus acciones, tus decisiones y continuar con tu vida. Ser la mejor persona que puedes ser y ya.
Gracias. Gracias, David. Perfecto. Mr. Mike Cruz, any final thoughts from you, sir?
No, just keep the faith. Keep aware of what's going on. These are troubling times. Fortunately, I've lived through some of it in the past, but we got to remember that our black brethren have gone through this for decades of hardships, and so we're just seeing a little bit of it. I think as long as we have our Constitution and we have laws governing our United States here, we will survive.
Yeah.
But if the Constitution fails us and our government fails us, then that's going to be a different story. And I don't think it's going to happen. But like I say, the revolution is coming. The people will speak, and things will change.
Yeah.
And hopefully they will get better.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it.
Hang in there, guys.
Thank you so much. And with that, muchas gracias. Thank you very much for jumping in on this conversation. I know it's a heavy topic and difficult topic, but this is what Cafecito Chats is about, bringing the community together, bringing individuals together so that we can talk and bring awareness for the most part to some of those topics that are taboo or difficult to discuss, and have an open, safe forum for us to share some thoughts. So with that, muchas gracias. Thank you so much, and we'll see you next time. Hasta luego. Bye-bye.